Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm really excited to share this new mini gouache painting tutorial where we're gonna paint these two fall-ish flower and forest scenes. I have quite a few of these mini painting tutorials on my channel, and the point is to keep everything pretty simple and use similar colors so you can easily achieve both of these paintings in the same painting session. But without further chit chat, let's get started with the first painting on the left side, where we're gonna start by painting a black background color blob, and I'm using a flat brush here. I did mix some brown to the black, but it didn't really do anything. Maybe it made the black slightly warmer, which was kind of my idea here, but adding black just on its own would probably look exactly the same. If you're wondering why there are already paints on my palette, it's because I already filmed this first painting, but I didn't like how it turned out, so we're doing it again. Anyway, I took a small break here to let the background dry, and then we can start painting our first leaves. I added this olive green shade to the palette and mixed it with the previous two colors to make it darker, and then I just started to sweep this color on the page using a pretty thin brush and these quick vertical strokes. So I was just trying to create some long leaves, grass and stems for the flowers we're gonna add on top, and I also wanted to paint some quick and loose leaf shapes here and there. We're gonna add more green leaves and details to this painting later, so here I was just focusing on these darker green-brown shapes that will kind of stay in the background but add some interest and dimension to the colors overall. I tried to resemble daisy leaf shapes here without trying too hard either. Daisy leaves look kind of complicated with all the spikes and details going on, so I was just trying to get pretty close to that look. I sometimes feel like the more I try to make each shape clean and focused, the less realistic and airy my paintings look. So this time I tried to leave some black color between the leaves and not stress about them too much. One reason I wanted to paint part of the leaves before the flowers is that it's a bit easier to paint these long lines without needing to worry about painting over the flowers. So by doing this, we have some continuous shapes in the background. But before we finish the leaves, it's time to jump into the flower part. So we are painting daisy flowers, but I wanted to change the colors slightly to make this more fall appropriate. So instead of the typical white and yellow daisies, I'm using this warm peachy color for the petals and a more reddish brown color for the center parts. I actually started by painting some of these bigger center circles all over the canvas, but if you find it easier to paint the petals first, that works perfectly fine too, and I'll paint a few extra flowers like that here as well. But then we'll saturate our brush with the lighter color and start painting the petals. I tried to use the shape of the brush to my advantage to create these elongated oval shapes, and I rotated the direction of my strokes as I was working around the flower. Painting with a light color over a black background can be quite tricky and leave streaks or bold spots to the shapes. So if you feel like your light colors don't look pigmented enough after the first layer, just let it dry a bit and go over any of those shapes with a second or even a third layer if needed. The quality of your paints and the amount of water you use can both affect the pigmentation of the paints, but usually just simply adding those extra layers will fix the problem. I tried to create slightly different angles to the flowers, and looking back, I think I should have painted a few more from a side angle, meaning that you can't see the petals above the center part. I also wanted there to be a few smaller flowers here and there just to break up the pattern and the sizes a little bit. And I also changed the lightness of the petal color, as you can see here, to add a little bit of variation and a few of these brighter flowers. Also, something I feel like I could have done a better job with would have been to focus the flowers a little bit more on certain areas rather than evenly distributing them over the black background. I tried to do this a little bit because I feel like that creates a more realistic end result, even though it might feel a little counterintuitive while painting. But anyway, after I was pretty happy with the amount of flowers in general, I started to go over them with a second layer where we're focusing a little bit more on some details and adding a bit of color variation, especially in the center points. I didn't want this painting to become too complicated, so we are not going to worry too much about shadows and highlights when it comes to the petals, but I do think that adding some lighter and darker dots to the center points creates a more dimensional and polished look. I also added some light dots here and there, which is an easy way to fill in some empty spots and add a bit of extra detail to the painting. But now that the flowers are in place, it's a little bit easier to place the rest of the leaves and stems accordingly. So we're jumping back to the green shades, and I was using lighter green colors here that will pop more against the background, and then started to paint these long stems and extra leaves here and there again. I wasn't being super specific with any of these shapes, so it's a little bit difficult for me to even describe what I was doing. I'm trying to get better at not speeding my painting tutorials as much as before so that you can follow along a little bit better and see what I'm doing at each point. But I also don't want these videos to be too long and boring, so I hope to someday find a good middle ground. Anyway, I was trying to add some extra thin lines here and there to add a more delicate look to the painting overall and help to add fullness to this field or whatever this is. I think I might have gone a bit overboard with all the details here, but maybe you can play around with leaving more black areas on your painting from the start and seeing if you prefer that look or this slightly busier field. But after adding some last flowers, dots and white highlight shades, we are done with the first painting in this video, and now it's time to move on to the second one, which will be a warm, again very high contrast fall forest. I really wanted to focus on lights and dark shadows in this one, and we're gonna get started by applying this orange peachy color as our background shade. I'm gonna use all the same colors we used in the first painting, so this first color matches the daisy petals, and I did try to add this very light area here in the right middle side. We'll end up darkening pretty much all the other parts of this painting, especially the edges, so if the paint doesn't look very smooth or has some color variation, don't worry about it, it's gonna get covered in a little bit. I was trying to think what would be the best way to go about this painting, and I decided to start applying these black tree trunks and other black areas right from the start. This is one of those paintings that's gonna look pretty weird for a while. We are definitely gonna go through an ugly phase during which you just need to trust the process and know that things are gonna start looking better once we get more colors on the paper and are able to connect these different areas. So I painted some of these tree trunks slightly lighter, and it's totally possible to lighten or darken these colors also later. So the main point here is just the placement and thickness of the trees. But then let's start to blend some lighter shades and start to build the forest around the trees. Basically, the light spot we left in the beginning is going to be the highlight of this painting, so all the colors close to that area should be lighter and pretty close to the background shade. And then we'll intensify the colors when we move towards the edges of the painting. I started to apply these light green shades to the ground and slightly towards the sky part as well. I wanted to create some light tree and branch shapes here to create an appearance of some faraway trees that will look much lighter than the trees up close. I was blending the green, coral and burnt sienna shades together pretty much all throughout this painting because I thought especially the green on its own would have looked a little bit too bright, and this just helped to get it closer to the background color. I also wanted to add some brighter orange-brown accents here, so I added some branches and also plants towards the front part, and we are in general starting to get darker with the colors to create layers and these shadowy areas. At some point, I even took out the black paint again and started to paint these very dark leaves and branches around the darker tree trunks. And I think it just adds fun, high contrast lights and shadows to this image. However, if you wish to go for a less strong contrast, you could easily modify these colors a little bit by lightening the dark shades and darkening the light highlight shades a little bit. And then when it comes to the actual shapes and what I'm painting here, it's pretty much all just tapping motions and some fine lines here and there. Again, the details were not the main concern with this painting. I was trying to focus more on the overall colors, shadows and highlights, so the details themselves are quite loose and quick. I was trying to blend some of these colors together to create a little bit softer look. And you can do that by using a drier brush which doesn't have any paint in it, and then just kind of smoothing over the paints you just applied to make them blend together a little bit better. But after I was pretty happy with the darkness and shapes here, I started to add some light finishing touches. So the same way we added dark details over the light areas, now we're gonna add some light dots and leaves over the darker spots to create a more highlighted forest look again. I tried not to go overboard here and just focus the light colors here on the left side of the painting. But then after adding some final details here and there and also straightening my painting shape overall, we're finally done with the second painting as well. I really hope you enjoyed following along and got some new painting inspiration. You could always simplify both of these paintings by leaving out a lot of the details and focusing on the main shapes and colors. So even if you're newer to gouache painting, I still think you should definitely give these a go. If this was your first time around here and you'd like to stay tuned for more, please consider subscribing. But I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!